there, Elizabeth O'Carroll here, Gimme 5. And before we begin, just a quick note for our viewers. Today's conversation with author Bill Hulseman explores the themes of identity, queerness, family, grief, and faith. While these reflections are shared with care, honesty, and even humor, they may touch on some sensitive or deeply personal topics for some. I invite you to approach this interview with compassion for yourself and for the stories we share. And you know that you're always welcome to pause, reflect, and return as needed. So let's get started and let's go meet Bill Hulseman and dive into this amazing book he's written. Hey everyone, welcome back to Gimme 5 book review and author interview channel, your go-to space for discovering powerful voices, meaningful stories, and the books that move us. Today I'm honored to welcome Bill Hulseman, a debut author whose deeply personal, thought-provoking, and often hilarious new book invites us all to look inward and reflect outward. His debut essay collection, 6 to Carry the Casket and 1 to Say the Mass, Reflections on Life, Identity, and Moving Forward, explores the complex intersections of identity, belonging, faith, queerness, and culture, with the kind of honesty that opens the door for new dialogue and personal transformation. As a former educator, campus minister, ritual designer, Bill brings a rare mix of intellect, heart, and storytelling to every page. Whether he's reflecting on Catholic traditions or Madonna, family relationships, or formative pop culture, Bill offers a blueprint for anyone seeking to understand how we inherit identity and how we can reshape it. I'm thrilled to have him with us here today to talk about this extraordinary collection, the power of ritual, and what it means to live truthfully in a post-2020 world. Get ready for a captivating experience. Please welcome Bill Hulseman to the show. Hey, Bill, how are you?
I'm better now. What an introduction. Thank you for that.
Well, you're amazing.
Oh, gosh, thanks. Yeah.
So tell everyone where in the world you are.
I'm in Seattle. It's another sunny day in Seattle. It's actually it's our one rainy day this week, but it really has been beautiful all week. I promise. Seattle, it doesn't rain all the time. I promise.
So that's just a vicious rumor, right? That it rains all the time?
Yeah, I think it's something that it's a stereotype that we like to persist because it keeps people away. Seattle's a friendly and welcoming city, but it's like, oh, too much. Come on, people. So if people are afraid of a little rain, it's like, no, they should stay home. That's right. Yeah.
If you like sunshine, go to Florida.
Exactly. You know, it actually rains more in Florida than it does in Seattle.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it's near the ocean, right?
Yeah.
Well, Bill, are you ready to dive in?
Always.
Fantastic. We're going to start a little bit with your background and kind of get to know you a little bit, and then we'll move on to the book. So, Bill, you've worn many hats: educator, principal, campus minister, and now an author. What led you to put your reflections into a book at this point of your life?
It wasn't a goal to set out and write a book. It wasn't a goal to, become a writer. I don't know if I can call myself a writer because I have written. Does that make me a writer?
Yes, it does.
The goal wasn't to become a writer or to write a book. I hit burnout. Over the course of several years, my parents had been slowly declining with long-term illnesses. And within the first 2 years of serving as a middle school principal, the hardest job I'd ever had. I was so excited. I'd been working for this, for a role like this for a long time. 2 days before the first day of school as a middle school principal, my mom died. And, my mom always had impeccable timing, and she always made it very clear, how to set our priorities. So 2 days before the start of school, mom died. And then I just never really got my footing, right? And so the next school year came and I thought, okay, this is going to be the one. And then about a month before that school year, my sister died very suddenly. And then my dad died a couple of months later. So the hardest job I've ever had, I had uprooted from the East Coast, and I was kind of, alone and without a network in the Pacific Northwest, and just swimming in grief. And it broke me. It really broke me.
What was the time frame between the loss of your mom and your sister, and was it your father?
Yeah, 16 months.
Wow.
August and December. And it just, and, my dad had a stroke a few years before, and my mom's cancer returned. And so it was as you can imagine, one thing after another, and it just, none of it. This is one of those moments where I felt really lucky to be in a big family, because there were so many of us to be able to absorb it.
Well,
and
thank
we call them the
goodness.
locals, the ones who lived, near Chicago, near my parents, and were helping out and getting to doctor's appointments and making them food, and helping manage, care staff that was coming and helping them. And then the ones who were the out-of-towners, the three of us who lived out of town, would come in for long weekends, or anytime I had time on my calendar. I was back in Chicago, and this went on for a few years, and we were all happy to do it. We were all happy to do that and be present to my parents. But after that, it was too much. It was too much. I think several of my siblings, we found ourselves like, well, what do we do now? After such terrible grief, and it's really transformative. It's really transformative. So I went through all of that, and I burned out, and I just couldn't, I wasn't happy going to work anymore. It was the first time that I woke up and didn't want to go to school in my whole life. And I thought, okay, something is different, and I need to take time. So I took a year off. A year off. I also, in that time, I had met my husband, and I moved, up to Seattle. We got married, and we got all settled. But I gave myself 1 year to do nothing professionally. I just wanted to heal. I wanted to focus on being well. Did a lot of yoga, did a lot of mindfulness work, did a lot of long walks with our dog, and then I started writing, and I'd started a small consulting practice, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. The daily question I'd wake up with was, what am I going to be when I grow up? And, I didn't know what it was going to be. It was a total opportunity to reinvent myself, which I totally didn't expect at that stage in my life, And I started a consulting practice, and as part of that, I started writing a weekly newsletter, and I started tapping into old memories and tapping into the things that I was grieving, the things that I was missing, the things that I was also remembering that were so joyful and inspiring. So I started writing to really process my own experiences and understand what got me to that place, what had led me to that place of burnout, also to that place in my life where all of a sudden I'm finding myself, why am I in Seattle with, I've got tattoos and a husband and a dog? These are things that I never expected to happen in my life. So how did I get here? Well, then 2020 happened. And then, with the pandemic, and in Seattle, we were, the first, I think, city in the US to really shut down. And we got hit hard, fast. And the city really mobilized. People, I think, really stuck together, and kind of we all held hands, and we're like, we're going to do this. We're going to get through this. And then the rest of the country wasn't listening to us. Like, hey, this is really bad. I promise this is not a joke. So we went through that. And then, of course, the murders of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor came to light, and the reckoning that we were all forced into. Finally, nobody could really ignore, that piece of life and the country that we lived in. And then, of course, the political tribalism that was, simmering and coming up in 2020. So all of that was happening in the world, and all of this was happening in my own life. It wasn't just, how did I get here? It's like, how did we all land here? Like, how did we all land in this place of total chaos and total, every day you'd hear on NPR, we're going to use the word unprecedented again. And no, really, this one is unprecedented too. Every day was that, right? So how did we get here? And that's when I started writing. And those are the kinds of things that I was trying to process and understand. And after a couple of years, I stepped back and looked at what I had written over time and the things that people had resonated with or responded to. And I saw a through line about identity, and I thought, I think there's actually something here. Maybe there's a book? I don't know. But then it started to, then the book sort of emerged on its own out of those reflections. So that was the origin story for where Six and Carry the Casket came from.
Fabulous. And Bill, I really believe that writing is so cathartic, for the healing process. And as you said, you really didn't know where you were, just writing just all these things that were going on, and the pain and the chaos and the, like you said, the external world as well as your internal world was all happening simultaneously. So to be able to write it out, and then this little key point jumps up out of you and goes, aha, maybe we should be writing about this.
Right.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Martha Graham always said the body never lies, and that to me was also when I would start writing in a way, or I would start thinking about things that was basically trying to get back to work. It was like, I was so programmed and like, okay, I got to get back to school. I got to get ready for the school year. August came around. I wasn't working in schools, and I was still in that. My body was like, we're still panicked. But then the minute I started thinking about school and work, then my body was rejecting it. My body was like, no, we're not ready. I'm like, okay. And so I guess I'll just keep writing, and I'll keep walking, and I'll keep doing yoga, and we'll see how I feel tomorrow.
That's good. Absolutely. Follow your intuition, because your body knows, your soul knows, right? So tell me, Bill, how has your background in religious studies and education leadership shaped the way you see and write about identity?
Starting with the easy questions. I love that. I got interested in religion because I had a really positive experience of religion growing up. Even though, I was growing up gay, and I knew I was different, but I didn't understand. I didn't have language for that when I was a kid. But I had a really profound and positive experience of religion. And I came from a really progressive Catholic family. My parents were very devoted, but that didn't mean that they were conservative. And so it planted the seed in me. I thought, I love religion. I love religious practice. I love what this brings me and the vocabulary it gives me. When I got to college and got more into theology and understanding how religious cultures emerged, and at that point I was really focused on Catholicism, and I started deep diving into understanding the history of Judaism and Jewish theology, and I just wanted to keep going. And I started a master's program, and my original focus was in systematic theology. If you don't know what systematic theology is, God bless you. Good. Like I after a semester of that, I was so bored, and I was like, oh no. And I'm talking to my advisor, and she said, well, what are you struggling with? And I said, well, I'm taking all these classes, and I thought I was so excited about this, and I'm not bored. And she said, well, are you enjoying any of your courses? I said, well, there's this one, but that was like my fun class. And it was a comparative studies class, and it was really focused on material religion. It was called Icon or Idol, and looking at different attitudes toward images in various religious contexts and cultures. I said, well, that's my fun one. And she leaned in and said, you should be having fun with your studies. Nobody ever told me that. So that was incredibly liberating. And I shifted my focus to comparative studies, and I got more and more focused on ritual and how we use ritual to construct culture, and how we use ritual to shape relationships, and how we use ritual to manipulate relationships sometimes, but also sometimes to build really positive connections. So I think it's a really powerful tool. And so I got really interested in that, and how in different cultures and religious contexts that came to bear.
So what role has ritual design played in your personal journey? How did it influence the way this book was written or structured?
It gave me a lens to see any place that I went. I walk into a coffee shop, and I have a ritual lens of, how is it? I was particularly drawn to a stream of ritual theory called performance theory. And performance theory kind of looks at how, the material things first, how are people interacting? How are people situated? What are the relationships that just the room and the environment is facilitating? And then understanding, an action might have like several layers to it, and understanding, how do you unpack or how do you peel back some of those layers to understand what's really happening at the core of the experience. I think that situated me perfectly for, teaching high school. I understood every group of students as another group to understand what are they doing to bolster their bonds, or what are they doing to degrade their bonds with each other. I applied that into work as a campus minister. I worked, and then when I was a school leader, I was also relying on that ritual lens, looking at how do we build community, not just from tradition and rah and academics, but like what are the new bonds, what are the experiences that we can create to build stronger connections with each other. And that was all, and so that was just my language. That was my starting point, my lens. And so when I started looking at the experiences in my life, I was drawn back to those formative, some rituals and some ritualistic kind of moments. What were I like looking back at like Christmas and looking at Christmas memories. It wasn't just thinking about Christmas memories and what I got, but the process of putting up a tree and thinking about all of the relationships in a family and in a community of just going into like one tree and what that can represent. I do an essay in the book called How to Put Up a Christmas Tree. And it's tapping into, I was sitting looking at our Christmas tree the first year that we put up a Christmas tree, my husband and I, and kind of sitting, and it wasn't just, hey, that's our tree. It was everything. Every holiday memory I'd ever had was flooding back, unpacking the ornaments. It wasn't just about like, oh, get it all done, get it up on the tree. For me, it became a really meaningful process of what does each ornament that I unpack remind me of? Who did this come from? Where did we get this? There's a story to tell. And so, and I remember my mom doing that as a kid. And I think that was her way of keeping storytelling alive and keeping mindful of like, what are the connections? It's not just making a pretty tree. It's pulling all these things together and telling a bigger story, or giving us a chance to sit back and think about that. And it wasn't just the positive stuff, it was the painful stuff too. But I think that's important to, it doesn't help to just shove the negative and the hard stuff under the rug. Putting it all up on the tree, we can sit and contemplate it all and understand where we came from that way. Yeah, so I think that's a kind of a long way of saying like, yeah, ritual is imprinted like every way, that every experience I look at, every memory I consider, that was my primary lens. Yeah.
Wow, that's so fascinating. The ritual, I never really thought of it like that, but that's cool to think, just like the tradition or the ritual of putting up the tree with family and the Christmas Eve dinner or whatever that families do together, to be able to have a ritual for every important thing that you're doing, from teaching to putting up the tree. That's really amazing. I like that concept a lot. Can I borrow that?
Please do.
Awesome. So how do you define the space between educator and writer, and where do they overlap for you?
I don't think there is a space between them. If I'm writing, I'm not writing because I'm an artist and I have a great gift for it. I'm writing because it's another extension of dialogue. And I think dialogue was one of the things that I've always been preparing myself for. I've always been eager to be in dialogue with people. So when I was a teacher, I wasn't interested in like sharing my wisdom with my students. I wanted to equip them to have good conversations with their friends and their neighbors and strangers. And, what do they need to get to know themselves and get to know others and understand the needs of the world? That doesn't come from just dumping information on kids. That comes from creating experiences where they can develop those skills. For me, the dialogue, preparing kids for dialogue was one of the most important things that we would do. I did a game called Moral Outrage, and it was like if we had 10 minutes at the end of class, we were finished with whatever. They never knew when we were going to play it, because it was really like, oh, we finished early, so time for moral outrage. And I would have kids who were morally outraged about something, one at a time. They'd have a 5-minute segment, and they would lead the conversation, and they would put out as much information about whatever the topic is that they were morally outraged about. And then they had to facilitate a civil conversation, and everybody was expected to participate. And I would joke that I'm preparing you being on talk shows. Someday you're going to be ready and you're going to be interviewed, or you're going to be facilitating a conversation on TV. You need to keep it going until the commercial break. But really, and I think they understood too, really what we were doing was developing, how do we have good and honest and authentic dialogues with each other? The topics in moral outrage, sometimes they ranged everywhere from the school was closing getting rid of the candy machine, all the way to global politics and life ethics. So my kids just ran the gamut of possibilities and conversations, and that always inspired me. I think writing for me, it was the same sort of thing. Each short essay felt like I was sitting down, well, here's the thing that I'm trying to work through. And if I was going to sit and talk to people about this, how would I tell the story, or how would people respond, or what are the kinds of questions that I might anticipate? So I don't think writing is separate from my work in education at all. I think it's actually all kind of an extension from the same starting point.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a retired educator and rehabilitation counselor too, and communication is key. And when we are communicating, we are being educated as well as educating. I love the resource that you used in moral outrage. I did something similar called talking chairs, because as an ESL teacher, a lot of the Korean students, I told them, this is safe space. You can talk about whatever you want. Whatever we talk about stays here, right? And they had the 5 minutes and they couldn't interrupt each other, but then they could comment on what that person said, right? In a nice way. What do we learn from that? And it would be amazing, like you said, what they would come up with. Some things were just, oh, my pet turtle won't eat and it's sick and it has to go to the vet, to, I'm really tired. I don't like homework. I have too many academies, to more serious stuff, right? And sometimes I wish I allowed more than just 10 minutes for it, because they can really get going, right?
Yeah. But isn't that brilliant? And and for them, it feels like, oh, this is a practice speaking, right, in the language, and a practice at extemporaneous speaking. But it's also at a deeper level. It's how to listen and talk to each other, and meaningful conversations, not just talking about the weather or what you saw on Instagram. It's meaningful conversation, and that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, one human to another human, and not on your avatar, and not swiping left or right.
Right? It's radical, wild, how revolutionary.
Imagine that.
Oh my gosh.
So Bill, let's move on to your book. I'm so excited to dive into. So 6 to Carry the Casket and 1 to Say the Mass is such a striking title. Can you share where it came from and what it means to you?
Oh, sure. The title of the book comes from the title of an essay about my mom. For her 80th birthday, I was nominated, told by my older sisters to give a toast at the start of they went through all the siblings and they're like, nope, we don't want him to talk. Nope, we don't want her to talk. Nope, we don't want him to talk. And so they went down the line and landed at me like, Bill will talk. Right. He's good at that. Good. So I got nominated to give a toast at my mom's 80th birthday party, and gosh, it was about 3.5 months before she died, and so it was actually a really beautiful kind of opportunity to, with her friends and with our whole family there, to be able to kind of stand up and honor her. Well, I decided to roast her in that moment. Not really roast her, my mom had a way with words, and the thing that my siblings and I joke about is, the phrases, the catchphrases that she would often use. So I gave her top 10. I listed the top 10 catchphrases that, things like semantics is the problem with the world today. She said, I included that in the dedication of the book, because she said that to every problem you ever heard, semantics is the problem with the world today. And it wasn't like, oh, that's a cutting insight. It was like, wait, what is semantics? And then it would pause. And then once you finally remembered what semantics was, yeah, it is the problem with the world today. Huh. How about that? So that was one of the 10. But one of the 10, of course, was 6 to Carry the Casket and 1 to Say the Mass. I'm the youngest of 10. Among the 10 of us, there are 7 brothers. And when people would, when my mom would say she had 10 children, and people would say, you have 10 children? And sometimes if my mom wanted to deflect, she'd say, well, they're from my husband's first marriage. which wasn't a lie. She was the first marriage, but it was a good, and people would be like, wait, what, huh? It was enough to deflect and confuse to move on with the conversation. But when people said, 7 sons, like that was some extraordinary feat. And she said, well, God gave me 7 sons for a reason, 6 to carry the casket and 1 to say the mass. Good Catholic family, right? So, you want a priest in every family. Well, of the 7 brothers, the first one, not going to be a priest. Second one, not going, maybe. Nope, not going to be a priest. All the way down the line. So by the time I came around, I think my mom was giving up hope on the prophecy of 1 to say the mass at her funeral. And when I declared a religious studies major, when I went to divinity school, she wasn't worried about professional outcomes or getting a job. I think she really thought like he's on his way to seminary. But so I'm the closest that she got with the campus minister. Yeah.
Wow, that is an amazing.
So I'm the one to say the mass, but it was my first, one of my first identities that my mom really gave to me. I also joke often that my mom prepared us for her death from the moment we were born. So little things like that, like, why did you have 7 sons? Well, 6 to carry the casket and 1 to say the mass. Like, right, you're going to die. I get it. So Irish, so Catholic, right?
Well, with 7 boys, I had 1, and that was enough to keep me busy.
Yeah, that's plenty. I have none, and I'm exhausted.
Well, you have a husband. He keeps you busy, I'm sure.
This is true.
So, Bill, this collection unpacks so many layers: family, queerness, Catholicism, pop culture. Which of these themes was the hardest to write about, and which came the easiest?
It's funny. Yes, all those themes run through the book. But when I was writing it, I wasn't thinking about them in those kinds of categories. It was really just, here's that experience or here's that memory that came up, and mom and queerness kind of intersected in that moment. Like, oh, that's interesting. Or Catholicism and queerness over here, or, so like different things just kind of naturally intersected together. The hardest ones to write about were writing about my family and my experience as part of the family. Mostly because I was not interested in airing the dirty laundry. I wasn't interested in tarnishing anybody. I don't have any revenge to seek. I really just wanted to tell my story. So I think being cautious and being careful on the one hand about making sure that I'm telling my story and not putting words in other people's mouths. But on the other hand, not letting that constrain me from being honest and authentic, so I think that was always kind of a delicate balance. There were a few essays where Danielle, my editor, kind of pushed me to like, something's missing here. Something's missing in here. Can you push this further? Like, where can we open this up a little bit? The chapter on Ellen DeGeneres was the one where she really challenged me to open it up, and I kind of took a sledgehammer to it. And suddenly a whole new layer of the story, a whole new layer of my story emerged. Just thinking about Ellen DeGeneres and her old TV show, and thinking about the experience with my parents and coming out to them, and being able to summon all of that was easy. Being able to figure out how to articulate it in an authentic but also respectful way, that's challenging. Yeah.
Very challenging.
It's easiest to write about, on the other hand, because I'm always talking about, I'm always loving, I love, like, I don't remember, who sang what song or whatever, unless it's Madonna. I have a pretty good encyclopedic memory of the Madonna knowledge, but, and the Golden Girls. I remember the Golden Girls way too well, but I love making the connections between like pop culture and bigger ideas or bigger social patterns or behaviors or ethical questions. I think, when we don't take pop culture seriously, we're missing an opportunity. Like, we don't see like what's really impacting people. So so it was fun writing about pop culture. because it was like, I don't know, people don't talk seriously and lovingly about pop culture as its own phenomenon. So it was kind of fun it was fun to be able to move through those essays.
I can imagine, because they're all so diverse and different and polar opposites in some respect. And so to be able to make that connection is just so cool.
Yeah.
So, hey, Bill, you write a lot of humor, even while talking about deep pain. Was that intentional, or what role does humor play in healing or making meaning? Oops.
I think it's I'm not sure that was a conscious decision. I think it's just how I'm wired. So I do a lot of weddings. I do a lot of, I work with couples to design and officiate their ceremonies. And are you frozen?
I must be. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you. Okay, that's good. So my, sorry, what was I just talking about? I was worried the computer was frozen.
Oh, wedding ceremonies.
Oh, wedding ceremonies, right. So when I work with couples to design their wedding ceremonies, they always say, oh, we don't want it to be too serious. I'm like, ugh, no problem. But then they also say, oh, but we want to have a moment. I'm like, no problem. I swing really easily from the peak to the valley, from the serious and the solemn to the light and refreshing. And I think honestly, maybe teaching high school for a long time and working as a campus minister, I got a lot of practice. And I always found that with my kids, with my students, if I got them to feel something, they were going to understand or come back to something more. And more often than not, if I got them laughing about something, then I could take them deep. Then it's like, oh, if I've got them laughing and smiling and engaged, then it's like, okay, now let's get into the serious stuff. And so I think that kind of developed that unconsciously over time. So it wasn't really a conscious thing. It's really how I process. Like I don't like letting go of the levity. I don't like letting go of the joy. That said, I'm also really comfortable diving into the hard stuff. I love a good cry. I love good feelings. I love, it's not always easy to walk through it, but on the other side, I always feel better. Like I feel like, oh, I'm back to myself because I've been able to feel. Also, it's nice to be able to laugh and to be able to cry. It's a nice reminder, like, I'm not a sociopath. That's great. Like, I have feelings. This is wonderful. So yeah, I think it's just kind of I think that's more of a natural. That wasn't an intentional or conscious thing. That's how I'm wired.
And, we are human. And if we're not allowing ourselves to experience our range of emotions, then we're suppressing something. So a good cry is healing. A good laugh is healing. Sometimes even getting angry and throwing a little fit, and then afterwards laughing at yourself.
Yeah.
So, Bill, your book encourages readers to rethink the stories they've inherited. What was one narrative from your own life that you had to rewrite in the process of writing this book?
Oh my gosh, so many. I mean,
Pick your favorite.
The book really helped me understand who I am individually, not just as a member of this family. It gave me a kind of awareness and freedom of, I think growing up, we were raised with a really strong sense of family obligation and family connection. Like no matter what, family sticks together. We went through a really tough few years together. We all experienced that together, and each of us came out on the other side with a different perspective. For me, I felt less obligated to family. Like I'm not calling my siblings. I didn't invite everybody in my family to my wedding because I don't have a relationship with a particular sibling. Why would I want that sibling there just because that's what you always do? And that was painful, and it caused a little bit of a ruckus among my siblings. But writing helped me feel a lot better about that. It's not necessarily about sticking with family for obligation, but it's the family of choice. Not just the blood, the DNA relatives, but also the people in our lives who who responds to, take care of us, nourish us, challenge us, and love us at the same time. And that's not something that you always get from your biological family, right? So I think I came to the narrative that was rewritten there was moving from a place of feeling really obligated to family to feeling obligated to myself. And that's, that was a hard one to articulate, but I did feel, when I did a reread of the book, when the book came back, the first print copy of it, and I had to do a quick read to make sure, to give them the thumbs up at the printer to yes, print the whole set and get them on the boat. Rereading it the first time was the first time I recognized that I felt detached, from that obligation for the first time. I was like, oh wow, huh. I don't know how my siblings are going to react to that, but I hope for them to see that they're not just connecting with us and each other because we're related, but we should be connecting with each other because we serve some beautiful role in each other's lives. Yeah.
And that's the key point. We served a role in each other's lives, a beautiful role, no matter how painful, negative, positive was. We're all here playing roles for each other so that we can learn and grow. So that's a great point. I love that. So Bill, let's talk about identity, faith, and belonging right now. As someone who was shaped by Catholic traditions, how did you personally reconcile faith with queer identity? And how does your book invite others into that conversation?
Well, reconcile is an interesting word. I didn't feel a need to reconcile. I was always conciled. I was never unconciled that I had to reconcile. I never grew up with a sense of conflict between my sexual identity and my religious identity. That said, I also grew up with a deep awareness that not everybody in my faith tradition shared that attitude. And I know a lot of people who really struggled because what they absorbed from their faith traditions growing up put them at least in tension, if not in violent opposition to their natural sexual identity. For me, the key was always an idea in Catholic theology, the primacy of conscience. And my mom was very clear about the primacy of conscience growing up. She would talk about the Pope and say, oh, he's just another priest. He doesn't have any more authority than any other priest. He's just another priest. And if you ever said something about the Catholic Church, or she would openly disagree with the teaching of the church and say, well, my conscience says. For Catholic theology, the conscience is that piece of you that is closest to God. And so if your conscience is telling you something, that should be treated as, oh, that's God telling me, do this or don't do that. Even and especially when the law or church teaching, speaks otherwise. So for me, that was always a bolster. That was always that was always kind of a protective layer that I had. I never beat myself up too much about it because I knew that, well, I know I'm right. I'm just waiting for the rest of the world to figure out this is okay. So, so for me, it wasn't a matter of reconciliation. That said, I think I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to communicate to other people exactly that. I would frequently, when I was in divinity school and years after, I'd be out at a bar on a Thursday night doing shots, and somebody was like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a campus minister. Huh. And they're like, what? Yeah, I'm basically a professional Catholic. And the question was usually not what are you doing at a bar at 11 o'clock on a Thursday night? The question was, how are you still Catholic? That wasn't a question I ever asked. That, it was never a doubt that came in. So I think I was always trying to figure out how do I communicate that to other people, that I had a positive experience of religion. That doesn't mean I subscribe to all of the practices and teachings of the Catholic Church. And now I don't go to church anymore because it's too painful. I don't think of myself as an ex-Catholic or a former Catholic. I still identify as Catholic. It's still guides me in my life. I take it seriously. I kind of follow the liturgical cycle on my own, but I'm also a pluralist Catholic. I don't believe that this is the only way to be in the world. This is the only way to do religion in the world. But it's the vocabulary that I have to find harmony with the universe and to be at peace in the world. And
I like that, your vocabulary to communicate with the universe. How did you quite say that? Was awesome.
A vocabulary to help me be in harmony with the universe, with the natural world. To me, I think that's what religion, if there's any universality about religious practice, that's what I believe. I believe that we're all trying to find some harmony with our natural world. And some people have profound experiences and they tell other people, and they have profound experiences, and there we see religious traditions born and grow. But I think we do ourselves and each other a disservice when we assume we're all doing the same thing. We're not doing the same thing. If we were doing the same thing, we would all be literally doing the same things, but we have different practices. We have different language for describing the universe and our experiences and making sense of it. People might be volunteering together at an environmental cleanup, but they have very different reasons. One, because this is God's creation. Another, because my grandchildren are going to live in a toxic universe or a toxic world. So, we might look like we're doing the same thing, but we're really not. And I think that's a piece that I've come to really value in terms of what my queer identity really enabled me to see. Because I saw, I grew up seeing difference that I couldn't necessarily name or understand. That doesn't mean that difference isn't there. So that's really helped me shape and approach difference with compassion, not with fear.
Yeah, and that's the big one too, is fear, because of societal programming. It's not an easy path to walk, and I love that phrase about the vocabulary in the universe. I'm going to have to borrow that one too.
Yeah.
So what's your message to readers who feel torn between the institutions they were raised in and the identities they've come to understand?
Neither is fixed. These are all things. I'm a constructivist. I'm a social constructivist in my philosophical outlook, which means, I think we construct our realities. We construct meaning from our experiences. An institution, think of an institution like a building. It needs to be repaired. It needs to be updated. It needs to be remodeled over time. When we just assume that, oh no, it should just be like that forever, then we actually let the institution crumble. We let the building crumble. I think there's a parallel there. And in terms of the identities that we have, we might be handed an identity, and to some of us that feels like a trap, and other people it feels like liberation. It's like, oh yes, this is the world that I deserve, and this is the world that I want to live in. Others, it's like, whoa, this does not fit for me. But it's not fixed. It's like I think that's the message, is we can always adapt or reject or amend or expand, the identities that we've been given, and we can always create new identities. The challenge is, will the people in our lives let us? Will the authorities that govern the institutions of our life let us? I think that's kind of the meta question that we're stuck in right now. Are we letting each other live as we would live, or are we imposing some way of living on each other?
Exactly. And I kind of think
create themselves or not,
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you there. Absolutely. And I think, and you say, will they let us? It's more like, let them. For me, it's like, let them have their opinion, their day, whatever they feel, and I'm going to do me and you do you, and life is about choices, and it's okay to be constantly evolving and changing identities, and people in your life they're going to come and go, and that's okay too, as long as you're accountable for yourself at the end of the day and you're not bringing harm to anyone, then by all means, this is a personal journey here on this planet. So live life to the fullest and don't be apologetic for it, right?
Amen.
Fantastic. So, Bill, do you see this book as a form of a ritual itself? And if so, how?
Well, let's talk about ritual. So I think we overuse the term ritual. We apply it to things that aren't necessarily rituals. So I think we use the term ritual to elevate something, to kind of emphasize something's importance. It's like, oh, that's my ritual because it's meaningful. But I think that also dilutes what ritual does. I think a ritual requires some intended transformation. So whether it's something you want to become something new or see something differently or deepen something, you go into a ritual with the sense of I'm engaging for some kind of transformation. Whereas like a pattern or a habit or a discipline, those are meaningful in their own right. So we don't have to turn them into rituals to make them feel more important, right? So is the book a ritual? Maybe. I think it was, in terms of maybe in a meta sense of, I didn't go into the book expecting this kind of transformation, but I expected something. But it wasn't something that I think of as a unified experience. I actually think of the book as, for every essay in there, there's a whole different experience. The ritual is going to come when I actually am able to hand it over to people. When people are reading the book now, I'm trying to figure out a way to ritualize that for myself. I'm planning a launch party for the book, and actually, of course, I'm putting the ritual mindset into that. And I want it to be fun, and I don't want it to feel like a solemn. I'm not going to light incense or anything, but but I want it to be a moment where I see it differently, and I see myself differently, and I open myself to seeing my stories as other people might see them. So that's the kind of transformation that I think I'm intending, now. So it's kind of a ritualized approach, but I don't know if the book itself is a ritual. Yes. Semantics is a problem with the world today, as my mom always said. So when it comes to how we define and understand ritual, that's for me, that's what it all boils down to.
Her voice is still in your head.
Oh my God. Every 7 minutes I hear Sheila like, oh, come on.
That's hilarious. Well, I like the fact that you're already thinking about a way to, presenting your book to people that you meet and creating some kind of a special ritual for it.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So, Bill, in your bio, let's backtrack a little bit. You mentioned the impact of pop culture, especially, and I love this, the Golden Girls and Madonna. So what did they show you about selfhood that your environment didn't?
I'm just going to take a sip out of my Rose Island mug.
Yeah, there you go.
I can't tell you how much my life is covered by the Golden Girls. Golden Girls and Madonna. I mean, among other things, but they are two of the outstanding influences in my life. I was a Madonna fan. I was a secret Madonna wannabe as a middle school student. Sneaking home I'd turn on the video hour on the local channel 44 before there was MTV and video hour. Before everything was accessible, so it was that 1 hour a day. And I remember seeing a Madonna video and like, oh, she's my new best friend. And it was just, over time, she's called the great reinventor as a performance artist, as a pop artist. And I don't think of her as an inventor. I think of her as more as a revealer. It's like she appeals with every new identity and persona that she introduces to the world. She's really pulling back a layer and showing us a new level. So it's this wonderful journey. When you follow her path, it's this wonderful journey of how do you constantly recreate yourself to the best version of yourself, but you're still saying the same thing. I think that's beautiful. That's powerful. But she, more than that, especially as a kid, as a teenager, as a college student, she was bold about asserting her place. And as a woman in the music industry, nobody had done what she was able to do. She left the door open behind her, which is all the more powerful, so that other women in the industry and other marginalized voices can have access, have at least a route to a stage and a mic, right? Over the course of her career, she also very consciously included and collaborated with folks from marginalized identities. And I did a presentation at a corporation for their Pride Month, programming a couple years ago. And we were looking at Madonna as a model for queer allyship. And over the course of her career, I pointed out three kind of key points. One, Like a Prayer, when she was definitely the white savior. She was Michelle Pfeiffer in the classroom, teaching those poor kids how to write, and she's going to save the world. But it was incredibly bold, and it was incredible, and what she invoked in the Like a Prayer video, it wasn't just being provocative. She was bringing in medieval Christian mysticism and the American civil rights history to weave a story to talk about, like, how do you know what to do in the world? Anyway. So Madonna, she was front and center as the white savior. And then you see in Vogue, like, she's side by side with the people from the ballroom. She wasn't trying to become like one of the ballroom performers. She made space to perform side by side. And then years later, she was giving her stage over. There's a great moment at the World Aid concert where she collaborated with Gogol Bordello, a gypsy punk band, one of my other favorites. And she's out there with Gogol Bordello, and then she disappears, and it's just the two lead people from Gogol Bordello. And that, to me, was pretty profound. She's like, okay, everyone's paying attention to me, and I'm just going to walk away, listen to these guys. And more recently, in the Madam X album, she did a video for Dark Ballet, and it's all about Joan of Arc. But she cast Mickey Blanco, who's a trans activist, a person of color, playing the part of Joan of Arc. And so I have so many layers to that. This podcast is not long enough for me to unpack that video. But you don't even see Madonna in the video except for one brief shot, and she's even veiled. She's kind of a witness in the crowd. You don't see her at all. To me, that was like, okay, that's a journey of queer allyship. There was a point when you needed to be standing out and speaking up on behalf of other people. And then there's a point where you need to share your stage. And then there's a point where you need to get out of the way. So on top of just being a fantastic performer and being an advocate for an outspoken advocate for all sorts of causes and people on the margins, she also modeled it through her art, like how to stand up, how to advocate for someone, how to get out of the way, right? The Golden Girls, similarly, I remember my first memories of watching the Golden Girls or watching it with my mom on the floor in her bedroom. We were sitting, leaning back against the bed and playing Scrabble while we watched the girls. And then the girls, my mom was about their age when the show started. And so it was a familiar world. Like, I knew these women, but then they were able to tell stories that weren't being told on TV. And they were, they pushed boundaries. I remember as a kid seeing, the gay storylines pop up and like, oh, wow, someone like me is actually on television. Of course, it was Monty Markham, and there's no homosexual cell in his body, but they told a story about how a family, how people, how friends could and should respond when somebody shares that piece of their life with them, And so it planted these seeds for so long. I still watch the Golden Girls. Literally, laundry day comes and the girls are just on constant rotation in the house. I've watched the entire series maybe 7,000 times. But every time I watch it, there's some new revelation, some new resonance. Like 40 years ago, they were talking about this, and we're still grappling with it. But the girls had, they were able to plant seed and give people vocabulary, give people language to get out of their own living rooms or wherever they're watching the TV and imagine interacting with each other differently. All because of these four this odd, eclectic, assemblage of characters together. And something about that opens a door and really invites people in. So that's some of the reasons I love the girls.
So was Rose your favorite character?
Well, I mean, that's like asking, do you have a favorite child? Like, of course I have a favorite, but I'm not going to tell you who my favorite is. I will say, however, I am a total Blanche. Like, Blanche is like, there was a time in the early 2000s, when the internet and social media were sort of emerging, there were lots of quizzes, like, who are you? Which Sex and the City character are you? Which, and so the Golden Girls, there were, I don't know, 10 or 12 times I took which Golden Girl are you? I would use different answers every time. I would try to skew it. The internet knew I was Blanche. Every time, Blanche. So, and it's not because, I'll leave that aside. But it's because Blanche like has like this amazing combination of vulnerability and and then fear, and she's kind of trapped, right? She's projecting an image, and she tries so hard to project that image, but then she's also really quite vulnerable and quite fragile in some ways. I always felt I felt connected to her in that way.
Yeah, Blanche was very outspoken, I think, too, as well.
It was great. Like, I mean, it's funny when you go back now and you hear the studio audience laughing, you know, when they make jokes about Blanche, you know, sleeping with a guy or sleeping with another guy, or, you know, the scare when she thinks she's pregnant, but she's actually just entering menopause, right? And so she panics, and the girls are all like, oh, well, we're all going to raise this child. That's going to be, you know, like, that's hilarious. Like, that's amazing. Like, that didn't, you know, but the audience was like, this is hilarious because she's a slut. And I think of it now, and it's like, I think it's hilarious that she doesn't remember who the father might be, but that's not what she's worried about. She's worried about, what is this doing to my life? And it's like, oh yeah, like, oh right, we shouldn't care that you're a slut. Like, actually, the show celebrates Blanche's slutness, right? The slut is dead. Long live the slut. There's a great line when we find out that Rose had more boyfriends in high school than Blanche. Like, the slut is dead. Long live the slut. And Blanche reacts, Dorothy, take that back. That's the meanest thing you've ever said. So it's like they didn't dwell on that piece of Blanche's character because they wanted to vilify her. They dwelled on that to say, like, hey, this is part of her life, her experience. This is her experience as a woman of this age, and we should all celebrate that. And we can laugh at it, but we should be laughing with it, not at it, at her.
Yeah, with it, exactly. Yeah, so what role do TV, music, and books play in helping us imagine new versions of ourselves?
You know, isn't it amazing when a song comes out and you hear a lyric and you're like, oh my God. And it just sticks with you, and you sing it over and over in your head, or you sing it while you're in the shower, or you sing it every time it comes on the radio. And it's amazing how a song can just, you know, in short, pithy phrases, like say something that you've wanted to say for a long time, or it gives you language that you weren't able to construct about how you're feeling or how you're responding to something. When Chappell Roan's out, you know, dramatic rise last year, you know, suddenly everybody was listening to Chappell Roan within the space of a couple months, right? But when I first heard Pink Pony Club, it was one of those moments where I've been waiting my entire life. I've been waiting for 48 years for this song to come up. It was like an instant anthem. Somehow she was able to, at a young age, as a young queer artist, she was able to capture an experience that a lot of queer people have of, you know, that first time finding yourself in a space where, like, oh my God, I'm home. Like, this is me, and I hope you can all celebrate it, but I'm not going back to my old life. And it's in a bop, and it's a hook, and you get into it, and you see the videos of people singing along at concerts, and people caught onto it because she was able to tell a story that hadn't been told, but we were all waiting for, you know? So I think, you know, different media, you know, different art media will open up new doors like that. You know, it's like you put an image in front of you that you've never seen before, and you could respond like, oh, that's ugly. Or you could respond like, oh, oh, yeah, I like that. Interesting. You know, so for me, and I think especially for queer people, you know, young queer people, we were listening. I think it's different for the generation now, but when I was growing up, we were listening for any morsel, any little reference in a song or on a TV show. Just, you know, when a gay character or when a character on a TV show was just a little fey, it was like, oh, you see that background? You see that waiter? We made it. We're on screen. You know, so it's like when you hear those things, it's like, oh, suddenly like somebody else experienced this too, and it makes me feel real. It makes me feel valid. It makes me feel like, oh, I haven't been making this up. This isn't a mental disorder. This isn't. It's not a phase that's going to go away. It's like, oh no, this is. Oh wait, this is a human experience, and look, Chappell Roan is singing about it, and we can all sing along and understand through those words the joy and the peace that you find, and then you just get to have a really good bop along the way.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree. And it's not that we need to be validated by another human being, but validating an experience that we in common share, and to be able to just take peace in that, right? I love that you brought up that example. So were there any surprising cultural references that worked their way into the book as you were writing?
Surprising cultural references?
Yeah.
Interesting. Can you say a little more?
So cultural references, maybe such as like in Seattle, there's definitely a special culture in Seattle. Did any of those type of genres make it into your book?
I did make a specific reference about moving to Seattle, where there's a flower pot and a shop to buy pot flower on every corner, and everybody's got man buns and tattoos and a dog, and I'm starting to blend in. And there were moments like that where I thought, I'm really a Seattleite. I mean, in my heart of hearts, I'm a Chicagoan. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, but my mom grew up in Lincoln Park and Edison Park. So I feel like I'm one generation removed from an authentic Chicagoan. It's a big thing for Chicagoans. Like, you're from Naperville, you're not from Chicago. It's like, but my mom grew up in Edison Park. So I think of myself as a Chicagoan, a Midwesterner. I lived on the East Coast for a long time. The longer I was on the East Coast, the stronger my Chicago accent got. It was the most fascinating thing. And then I come out to the West Coast, and I think when I started writing, I did start to notice like the ways that I had maybe not assimilated, but I was finding myself feeling freer to express, freer to wear something new, freer to let my hair go. And the undercut as my hair got long during the pandemic, my undercut just kept getting higher. And, if I looked at a picture of myself today from my 20-year-old self, like, that's what I'm going to look like in 30 years. Like, oh, like, interesting. Huh. I think writing the book helped me see, like, I'm picking up like everything up from around my environment, around my space. I love it.
That's awesome. So what formative experience you unpack in the book that still teaches you something new today?
There are a couple of moments, especially since writing the book, there are a couple of things that I keep coming back to. One is that chapter about my mom, 6 to carry the casket, 1 to say the mass. And I return to the painful moments with less pain. And that's been powerful to return to those moments. And I feel like I've been able to, put a period on the sentence. Like, yes, I have gotten to the other side of this. I can now look back, with affection and compassion. I can recognize the pain was there, but it's not overtaking me anymore, So I think there's something really, really wonderful about that. The other essay that I keep thinking about, in part because I wonder if this guy is ever going to read this. He won't, but I talk about the boy next door, and like, my first kiss is like, I don't know, it was 9 or 10, and I come back, it's funny. I had never unpacked that experience until I started writing the essay that eventually led to it. And I, thinking about those early formative sexual experiences, those relationship, social experiences. And I think back to how few resources we had as queer kids just to figure shit out. It's like, the basic fundamental stuff, we were programmed with all the heteronormativity, and it's like, but I kind of don't want to pick a girl to walk in line with, why is that gender binary important? I don't understand. Even at like 10 years old, I was like, I don't understand that. And then this moment with this boy, it felt so natural, and then I couldn't talk about it. I didn't know who to talk about it, how to talk about it. I wasn't going to confess it at church because God only knew what was going to happen if I opened my mouth in a confessional and talked about kissing a boy, But I think back on that, and I think how could things have been different for me if other people in my family were out, or at the time, or if there was more queer visibility, then it wouldn't have felt like something I had to contain, and I wonder if that friendship could have survived, if things were different. But I think we both knew, we couldn't talk about it, but we both knew like what we're doing wasn't going to be, we can't be found out. And there's a kind of a dramatic break at the end of the story, and we never saw each other again. And so I wonder how we could have helped each other kind of through that time if we had better language, if we had better idea of where we might be headed, or where, we couldn't see pictures of ourselves in 20 or 50 or 100 years. We were invisible. Like, it's one of the things I think when people talk about queer visibility, it's not just about the here and now. It's like, for gay men in particular, a whole generation of gay men was lost with AIDS. Oh. The cultural memory, the institutional memory that was lost with them is also, we have a deficiency in. We don't know how to cruise anymore. We don't know who the divas were, and we don't celebrate that. But I think we're starting to kind of climb back. We're starting to build back. We're not past AIDS, but we're now into a point where it's manageable, and now queer culture is thriving. Gay men's culture in particular, queer culture is thriving in a way. But we kind of had to make it up as we went, because we lost a whole generation of mentors. We lost a whole generation of people where we could have seen ourselves like, oh, that's what life is going to look like when I'm 50 or 60. When I was 20 or 30, there weren't many around. It just, they had died, or they were reclusive, or, it just, that whole generation was so traumatized. And then we see, even though we don't have children that we're passing these stories on to, like, we still are spiritual, our sexual grandfathers, right? And we've had to make it up in their memory and in their honor. So I hope we're doing them justice, by kind of the way that we're kind of recreating queer culture, that we're reviving a lot of things that maybe we don't talk about with people outside of the gay community, and straight people don't need to know how we spend our weekends, but but we've had to make it up as we go, and that's something that I keep coming back to. But that story in particular in the book, and there are a couple of others that I think, God, what would have happened if that generation had survived? And, where would we be today if they were able to flourish, and if the Reagan administration had not laughed at them and just ignored the AIDS epidemic rising?
That was such a painful time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I believe now that it's being rebuilt in a healthy, empowered way, that they're watching down from heaven going, good job, nice work, So, I have a similar story in my book too. I have a Love Knows No Race or Gender, and I tell the story of when I first kissed Alice at 9 years old, and my mother walked in and said, "You're going to burn in hell," and that messed me up for about the next 20 years. That I was scared to death of women after that.
Yeah.
So it's very formative experiences for sure that we keep unpacking and learning from. So, And Bill, we have a lot of young people, and actually any age of those that are out there who are, struggling with identity or just life. So how do you hope readers will use your book, not just as stories to read, but as tools for transformation?
I hope people will... Maybe if they see themselves in it, or if they see someone they know in the book, I hope it encourages them to start with compassion and with listening, instead of with telling people who they are, or telling people who you are in their life. Oftentimes I think you see a lot of people giving advice to young people, and it's like, well, did they ask? Like, I'd rather not impart any advice unless somebody actually asks, because everybody has different questions, and everybody requires different answers, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think about those moments where a sibling or a friend of the family or an adult in my life could have thrown me the lifeline and just asked. If anybody had asked me, hey, are you gay? I don't know if I would have reacted positively. I talk about a couple of moments in the book where, my brother asked me, I went to visit him when I was like 14 in New Jersey, and my brother asked me, oh, what kind of music do you listen to? And without my gay shields going up, I said, oh, the Indigo Girls. And I'm like, oh shit. I let him know that I'm listening to lesbians. And then and he kind of looked at me like, it's kind of a niche band, isn't it? And it was that moment of like, this is when it happens. This is when it happens. This is when it happens. And then it didn't happen. And I had tons of moments like that. I was like, somebody throw me a damn lifeline. Like my therapist, when I was a senior in high school, I kept like kind of hinting at like, I don't know, and gender and sexuality, blah, 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 blah. And he would just miss it and wanting to keep talking about family dynamics. Like, okay. So even my therapist didn't ask the right question. So it's like, don't tell kids what to do. Ask them what they need. Like kids are so much smarter than we were so much smarter as teenagers than we remember. We were so aware as teenagers more aware than we remember. But we also forget how hard it is when your body and your brain are doing backflips, and your every day is a new kind of physical torture for a teenager, right? We forget that. And so why do we clamp down on kids? Why do we clamp down on teenagers? Why don't we make space for them? Let them be messy. Let them know it's safe to be messy. Let them know the only thing you can do right now is to be a mess. So be a mess. And we are going to figure out how to rebuild together. Those are the things that come from asking questions, not telling kids what to be or how to be.
Oh, I like that. So would that be a mindset that you could maybe propose? So for those who are feeling lost or disconnected or trying to figure it out, is just let it be?
Let it be and pay attention. I think, I don't like quick answers. I don't like easy answers. Like self-help book. It's like, well, I'm glad this worked for you, but I'm in a different world. I'm glad that worked for you. A self-help book is not giving me answers that I need. I need to know what questions to ask better. So yeah, how do you the mindset is mindset disposition. Maybe that's the word that I'm looking for. It's a disposition of openness and curiosity, not of certainty. And the minute you start telling people what their life is, you are projecting the sense of you understand the universe better than anybody else. I doubt that. But when people approach with a question, isn't that wonderful? I love that. And so the disposition of curiosity, I think, is the key. Earnest curiosity, not just be like, well, why is that so weird? It's curious about oh, that's not my experience. I wish I understood that better, or I want to learn more. And so how do I ask the right questions? And I think that's what I hope people would come away from. Because so many times people didn't ask the right question to me, and that could have been a lifesaver.
Wow, that's huge. That's really huge, Bill, for sure. Asking the right questions. Mm-hmm. So now, Bill, your book is debuting. So it's coming out on July 8th. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So I'm going to put the information in the description box below. Is there any final words that you would like to leave our listeners with before we go?
Final. I use plenty of words, so I think I probably used it up. But I will. I want to add one last thing. There's a blessing from the Book of Blessings by Marcia Falk. Marcia Falk is the poet who translated the Song of Songs, that translation that I write about in the book. And the Book of Blessings is a whole Reconstruction Jewish liturgical text, and she offers a beautiful blessing that I like to impart for everybody, and it's be who you are, and may you be blessed in all that you are. And so I think the more that we can hear Marcia Falk's words and that blessing, the more that we can lead with that. That's what I hope for people. That's what I hope maybe comes out of this book. Maybe that comes out of the way that people just intersect each other. But I hope that I hope that we could all lead with that blessing. Be who you are, and may you be blessed in all that you are.
That's perfect. It summarizes it all, and it has so much impact just in a few words, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So, Bill, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing such intimate reflections with such clarity and grace. 6 to carry the casket and 1 to say the mass is a gift to readers navigating identity, transformation, and meaning making. We're honored to highlight it here on Gimme 5. And to our wonderful Gimme 5 listeners, thank you for being a part of this conversation. If you found today's interview powerful, moving, or just plain real, don't forget to like this video, hit the bell, get notified when new interviews premiere, and subscribe to Gimme 5 book review and author interview channel for more honest, inspiring author spotlights. And if there was a particular part of this episode that you really like and you want to comment on, please, let's hear from you down in the comments below. Until next time, keep reading, keep reflecting, and keep rewriting your own story. Bill, thank you so much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. This has been a joy.
Oh, it has. It has been so enlightening for me. So peace and love, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hey, Elizabeth O'Carroll here.